first of all, there are many preliminaries before a Dharma teaching. But I think the main three. First one is, whenever you go to a Buddhist talk, always remember that we're here because of the Buddha, fully enlightened Buddha. And to understand what the Buddha is not easy. There are many levels of meditator, practitioner, monk, nun, abbot, yogi, master, guru, mahasiddha, bodhisattva, Shravaka Buddha, Pratyeka Buddha, and fully complete Buddha. So we're here for the fully complete Buddha's teaching. And so that means, really, to be honest, it's so sacred, so holy, that we can't really comprehend fully his wisdom, his teaching, until we get there. But we have to try, using concept, using words, and even hearing the words. There are teachings just about how to hear, teaching us how to hear Dharma, using the correct concentration and using the correct way to understand the meaning of the words. Obviously, if you receive the teachings directly from a supreme bodhisattva or fully enlightened Buddha, certainly if you receive the teachings directly from a fully enlightened, complete Buddha, you will hear, each one of us will hear the same teaching, but according to our own dialect and in words best chosen for us to understand those teachings. So even if two people come from the same place, but they have different levels of vocabulary, they will hear it in the same dialect, the same accent, but different words. That's a fully enlightened Buddha has that skill. And that skill is a very sacred thing which is developed through the practice. And of course, extremely advanced spiritually. So I'm telling you these things because we really must respect what the Buddha achieved. The Buddha is an extremely, well, there is no, I mean, again, it's extremely doesn't really cover it, extremely rare being, because they have achieved, managed to purify the mind completely. Purify the body, purify the speech, purify the mind of all obstructions, of all obscurations, of all faults. So we must, before receiving a Buddhist teaching, we should obviously have great respect and faith, if possible, faith in such a being, the highest of all spiritual teachers. And the other thing is that being has no need to teach us, has no need to save us, has no need to come back, but it does out of pure compassion, loving kindness and compassion. The Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas have vowed, many of them have vowed to ceaselessly reappear, manifest for the sake of all beings until the end of samsara, the end of existence, the end of suffering. Because the first teaching from the Buddha, after Buddha, we say attained enlightenment in this lifetime, but actually he was enlightened before he appeared in this world as Buddha Shakyamuni, or the Indian prince, and then went to the forest. I'm sure everyone kind of knows the story. But what actually that lifetime was all about was proving to the humans, proving to mankind that enlightenment is possible. It's no good him just turning up and saying it's possible. He showed what to do. He went round and visited all the preeminent teachers in India at the time and reached their level, and then went on to the highest supreme level from there. So we have to have great respect, really, truly. And by having this respect, faith, and eventually, obviously, for the advanced or seasoned Buddhist, it turns into devotion. There is a huge amount of mental merit. There's a huge amount of mental cleansing which comes from having devotion into such a pure being, having faith in such a pure being. But no matter where you are on the path, or whether you're not on the path, whether you're just vaguely interested and you don't go any further and you don't listen to any more teachings and you don't do anything else, one thing I can tell you is, if you have a picture of the Buddha on your desk or hanging on the wall, or even just in your mind, visualized in your mind, this picture here, and every day, if possible, regularly every day, you just consider this with some kind of faith towards virtue, faith towards goodness, faith towards universal love for all beings, faith towards real, genuine motherly kindness, faith in compassion, in respect to this image of the Buddha, because Buddha actually represents, symbolizes the perfection of love, the perfection of kindness, the perfection of sympathy, the perfection of genuine, real, highest compassion for all beings without exception. And so whenever you consider, just visualize this golden body. You are actually visualizing what we call the perfection, the absolute perfection. And that will have a resounding, massive, hugely effective change, make a huge change to your mood, to your mind, to your concentration. A certain amount of joy will come, etc., etc. So if you've got any kind of, especially if you have any kind of anxiety or problems, worry, etc., you can do this meditation. You can visualize the Buddha and you can remember the virtues and goodness, the perfection of goodness, the perfection of virtue that the Buddha embodies, symbolizes, and it will help a lot. This is not just a technique. This actually works, because if you really must know, the Buddha's body is actually an emanation of our pure nature of mind. So it will work on a very deep level. It's not just like a lucky charm or something like that. It really does work on our deepest levels of consciousness. So anyway, so in the beginning of a teaching, it's good to have this kind of faith. And the second thing is a difficult subject, because we are in a very materialistic world at the moment. But the real basis of the mind practice, which is the main Buddha's Dharma practice, is renunciation. Renunciation means the opposite of what we do at the moment. What we do at the moment is we are attached. We are attached to our body, we're attached to our name, we're attached to our life, we're attached to our world, we're attached to every breath, we're attached to our food, we're attached to the taste of our food, we're attached to not getting ill, we're attached to being frightened of dying. There's so much attachment. And actually, when you become Buddhist, the first thing is to practice forgetting all that, not having that attachment to any of these things. And the reason we don't have attachment to any of those things, as the Buddha explained, they're simply impermanent, they're temporary. The body is temporary, food is temporary, we eat and we're full up, and a few hours later we're hungry, we need to eat again. Everything is changing all the time, this impermanence. And it's a great source of suffering. nothing stays the same. Everything is changing all the time. Everything is impermanent, and this is the main cause of the suffering. So we renounce all that. Instead of being attached to it, what we normally do in our daily life is ignore the suffering and falsely hold out for happiness and pleasure from these things. And somehow we manage to convenient manipulate the circumstances so that it seems like we're getting some kind of gain, some kind of pleasure from it. Even though, as I say, if you sit down for too long, you need to stand up. If you stand up for too long, you need to sit down. You know, everything is constantly changing. There's no real satisfaction or joy, but we just keep holding out for there might be. And it just goes on like that for a whole lifetime. We never actually get there. And we're very attached to these things that might cause pleasure. And so we're sort of pleasure seekers and attached to pleasure seeking, and it's become a mental condition, a habit, and we do it all the time. And so the first thing for a Buddhist is give that up and relax, just relax, and have some peace, and stop the mind craving and striving for the impossible gold pot at the end of the rainbow, and just renounce. It's a kind of almost kind of a rebellious, it's got a sense of kind of heroic nobility as well. It's not just sheer anarchic rebellion, but it's got a sense of that. It's got a sense of anarchic rebellion because you're kind of saying, no, not anymore. I'm not going to chase that. I'm not going to, it's childish. Look, we're like spoilt children I want this, I'm not happy, I won't be happy until I get this. It's never going to work. So when we talk about children and adolescents and adults in the terms of the spiritual world, we are childlike at the moment. And as we progress towards Buddhahood, as we progress towards bodhisattvaship, liberation, we become more grown up, we become more mature mentally, and we give up wanting the toys, we give up wanting the trivial pleasure, the temporary pleasure, and we become more sane and more graceful and more elegant and more patient. And we have a more of a grown-up, sensible outlook instead of just trying to find pleasure and fun all the time. And it's a very wonderful, sensible, calming, stable outlook that one can gain from the Buddha's influence. Obviously, because he's fully enlightened and he completely conquered all the causes of suffering in the mind, and taught from his experience. It's not theory, it's not opinion, it's actually, the Buddha actually traversed the path completely, as I say, and removed all the obstructions and causes of suffering practically. And when you get to that stage, the mind is so purified, it can remember every single stage of every process, every method that was utilized. And therefore, you can then reiterate and explain exactly the path, exactly the methods, exactly the process and progress that was made to others in a practical sense. It's not, it's not, there's no guesswork. It's precise. The Buddha explained precisely, I did this and that happened, and now you can do it. So the methods of these, the Buddha's methods, the Buddhist path, are primarily described in the sutra, what we call Buddhist sutra. And if you're interested in reading sutra, you can look it up. You can Google Buddhist sutra, And try and find a simple, basic one. They're all quite profound, but they are extremely helpful. If you've got spare time and you're interested, then you will find what they say very, very helpful. So anyway, the talks we've been giving are on these 4 seals. We sometimes call them the 4 great seals, and they were taught by Buddha in the sutra, 2 sutras mainly, but I think there's more. They're mentioned separately in other sutras. And then later on in the Shastras, the Tibetan masters and Indian Mahasiddhas put them together into these 4, what are known as the 4 seals, as in the king's seal, that he makes a wax seal at the bottom of a letter, or he seals the secret letter that needs to be taken by messenger. And that's why they're called the 4 seals, because they hold the seal of the Buddha. The king, the real genuine spiritual king, has placed his seal on these 4 truths and these 4 seals. And as you can see, the first one is all conditioned things are impermanent. And so these 4 seals, they came later on in Buddha's life, kind of. And initially, when Buddha first gave a teaching, it was called, the very first teaching that he gave to mankind was called the 4 Noble Truths. And I would like this evening to draw a parallel between the 4 Noble Truths and the 4 seals. The reason we sometimes say it's actually, when we say the great seal, 4 great seals, actually it's just the 3rd one, which is great, is known as the great seal. The other 3 are just known as the seals. And we'll get to that in a second. So we've given the talks on the first 3, and now we're on the fourth line tonight. But of course, we've got quite a few new people here tonight, so I will basically go over the 4 and also compare them to the 4 Noble Truths, which was the first of Buddha's teaching after he manifested full enlightenment in this world 2,500 years ago. So the first one is all compounded things are impermanent, and it simply means that if any phenomena, internally or externally, animate or inanimate, any object is made from causes, is produced, then it's necessarily impermanent. In the Dharma treatise, it says, all things that come together must separate. And so if you check, you will find that everything is like that. There is no exception. Every phenomena is a collection. Every phenomena is fabricated, produced, manufactured, a collection of causes. It has constituents, it has aggregates, it has parts. The noble truth, the first of the noble truths that goes with this, all impermanent things, all compounded things are impermanent, is the first noble truth, which is just called the noble truth of suffering. Very first thing that the Buddha taught was that we have to be noble. In other words, as I say, noble is kind of a heroic, brave inquisition or examination of things how they really are, the truth. And the truth is that existence is suffering. And you need to have, like they say, this heroic kind of noble mind that faces that. And it's extremely liberating. It's a wonderful thing. But instinctively, due to our instinctive survival cowardice, our instinctive survival nature from past lives, we instinctively avoid thinking about it. Suffering. No one likes to think about suffering naturally. But what Buddha said was, think about it. Face it. Realize it. Look at the suffering around you. Look at the suffering that you're going through. Look at the suffering that everyone is going through. And it's very, very helpful. It gives you an insight into the reality of life, and it calms the mind down, because for once you're facing the truth. You're being honest in your mind. So you may think, hold on, I'm not suffering all the time. And that's true. At the moment, we're humans and we're in the human realm, and the human realm isn't suffering all the time. Lower realms, in the lower realms, there are realms where there is suffering all the time. And in the animal realm, there are many, many animals that really do suffer, from the moment they're born until the moment they're eaten. They're on the run, it's fear, etc. So there are many, many beings in the universe and various realms that do suffer from beginning to end. But at the moment, we're humans, and it's mixed, joyful, happy, pleasure, and then neutral, and then some suffering, etc. It's all mixed up. But we choose to go with the pleasure and kind of neutral, and then when it comes to the suffering, we kind of cope. We've got coping mechanisms to ignore it or get around it or mentally override. But actually, it's all, even when we don't feel like we're suffering, there is what is known as imperceptible suffering. So obviously that means we can't perceive it. And also there's pervasive suffering, which means just generally living, actually. Just living has got always some kind of anxiety, slight anxiety, some kind of worry, some kind of dissatisfaction, always there all the time. And so what Buddha said was, all beings are suffering in some way. Even in the long life God realms, there are heavenly realms that are still in existence. They still have to die and they still have to be reborn. Even they, although their life seems so perfect and pure and luxurious, there is suffering. They still have a certain kind of rivalry, jealousy, and little things, just slight. But even that is pervaded by, and then in the end, of course, there's terrible suffering in the God realms. But we don't need to go into that at the moment. I'm just giving you some idea that, all compounded things are impermanent. The end of the God realm is a very good example of that, actually, because they live for a very, very long time up there. But in the end, their merit is completely exhausted and they have to be reborn in the lower realms. And therefore, that is a perfect example of what Buddha was saying about, due to the change, we suffer. If things could stay the same, our suffering would be greatly reduced. But because everything keeps changing all the time, if you think about it, if you contemplate this, you will understand that it's the change, the constant changing that causes the suffering. As I say, when you get hungry, pain. If you eat too much, then pain. It's the change. All suffering is caused by change. If things could just stabilize, but they never do. And it's the natural law that everything changes, because all compounded things are impermanent. So that's the first one. The second seal is all contaminated things are suffering. So this is very helpful, because what this means is that our suffering is caused by contaminating the mind with this idea of an independent self. All it means is, a very easy example is, if you walk down the road and you see a scratch on a car, it doesn't really affect you that much. If you then realise it's your car, it affects you very much. It's as simple as that. Contaminated suffering means you suffer through being attached to something, and because you think it's you, something personal to you, and therefore that's the contamination. So we suffer greatly from this body because we think it is us. When it gets ill, the worry, the fear, and many, many other things. There are many extensions of fear and anxiety and worry. And this is all caused by the self-grasping, the idea that this body, we impute a self, an identity on this body that's inherently real. We do not think of it as impermanent. We do not think of it as temporary. We do not think of it as an imagined projection of an identity. We actually think that there is a core real me in the middle. And the noble truth that leads to that, that goes with this, all contaminated things are suffering, is the noble truth, the second noble truth, which is the noble truth of origin, which means the noble truth of the origin of suffering. The origin of suffering is the contamination of the mind with the attachment and the aversion and the ignorance. The ignorance is that idea that things are inherently existent, which means you want them to be stable, you want them to be everlasting, but they keep changing. So we contaminate things with the idea of things staying the same, and then when they change, we get angry, we get upset, we suffer. So then the third one is the Great Seal. And this is the answer. This is now the solution. And the noble truth that goes with it is called the noble truth of cessation. And this cessation is the real beauty of the Dharma. It's the real result. Cessation is the result. I know it doesn't sound very exciting. I know it doesn't sound very exciting, but cessation means the cessation of suffering. The cessation of mental anguish, the cessation of sorrow, the cessation of lamentation, the cessation of loss, the cessation of war, the cessation of crime, the cessation of harm, the cessation of all the sufferings, every single one of the torturous sufferings that we have to go through in existence, in all our lives, because there are many, many places to be born, and they're all various types of suffering. And this, by decontaminating the mind, by realizing this third one, which is all phenomena are selfless, by realizing that all phenomena, especially us, especially our body and our mind, doesn't actually have an inherently existent real self, by realizing that, we cause a cessation of all suffering. No more suffering ever again. And the way to do this, the truth of the cessation means that it is true that it can cease. And this is very, very good news. And we don't realize this. We don't realize that it can cease. We keep trudging on with life, trying to find happiness in existence, trying to find not suffering in existence. And it's not possible. If you want to get to the joy, the real happiness that we're looking for, we need to cease. We need to stop grasping. We need to stop clinging. We need to stop grabbing, striving to appease a self that doesn't exist. And that's why this third one, the Great Seal, is very important. All phenomena, without exception, all phenomena are selfless. And that brings us to the last one, which is tonight's talk. Finally got there. The noble truth that goes with it is called the noble truth of the path. And the fourth seal, tonight's talk, is Nirvana is the real peace. So everyone, I think, has heard of Nirvana. And basically, the very simple explanation of Nirvana is it's the opposite of samsara. Samsara means existence, worldly existence, birth. So if I just go back, first of all, I'd like to go back to the third one, which is all phenomena are selfless. Basically what happens with samsara, with existence, with birth, body birth, is male and female, obviously white and red element produce the body. So the parents produced your body, your physical body. But their parents cannot produce the mind. Mind does not come from the parents. Mind comes from your previous life, your previous mental continuum, the mind stream. And at the point of conception, which is an ironic name because it's actually, anyway, its concept plays a very major role in the delusion of existence. And so to call the actual point of producing a baby, conception, is so ironic. Anyway, at the point of the reproduction, the conception, the mind comes in between the two elements and forms the karma, shape, fortune of the child, the baby, to be born, us. So your mind, the actual main thing, the mind is the boss, you know, the basis of everything. Everything we do comes from the mind. Everything we do has to be thought about first. The body can't act without the mind. The mind is the boss. So at the point of conception, the parents produce the body, provide the form for the body. You know, the four elements. Form is water, air, fire, earth, and that is provided by the parents, and then the mind enters and produces the consciousness, which is the awareness. And that awareness has continued from that point of the conception, entering at the point of conception, until right now, this very moment. The awareness that you are listening and looking, hearing, thinking with at this moment is that consciousness, that mind stream that entered into at the moment of conception right back then when you were born. So, and then you can add your age, how many years ago that was. And that has continued up until now. And then when the body finally breaks down, because all compound things are impermanent, so whatever comes together as a collection is produced must separate. When it finally separates, the mental continuum will leave and it will continue to the next life. And depending on the condition of your mind, it will depend on what kind of life that is, and parents, etc., many what we call karma. So it's basically down, if you're interested in what changes, while we're on the subject, if you're interested in what changes, when obviously we're all interested in what our next life is going to be like, the cause of it is what we're doing now. Action is what causes the mind stream state to change, depending on your intention in your actions. So you've got physical actions, verbal actions, mental actions. If your physical actions are positive, your speech action is positive, and your mental action is positive, then you will have a positive rebirth. If you have a negative physical actions, killing, stealing, negative verbal actions, lying, deception, exaggeration, and if you have negative mental actions, which is pride, jealousy, anger, greed, desire, then obviously there will be a negative rebirth, and it will have repercussions in the future. And this is basically what all religions teach. It's just that normally they don't mention the fact that you're actually reborn. Because I think a lot of people, especially in the past, didn't like the idea of that. But Buddha doesn't hold back. Buddha tells you absolutely everything exactly how it is. That is the beauty of the Buddhist path. There's nothing hidden. It's extensive. It's a vast ocean of truth. So we can find out everything, whether we like it or not. So anyway, nirvana is the real peace, is the final result. It actually means liberation or enlightenment. And this is very, very helpful. This is for the meditator, for the practitioner, for the Buddhist. This line, literally in such a short line, it shows us the real result. Very simple explanation. Like I say, the Dharma is a vast ocean of teachings, and it can seem very complicated and technical. But nirvana is the real peace, very simple. And basically what it's saying is, through cessation, through giving up all the obscurations, through giving up delusion, through giving up the grasping, clinging, and striving for oneself, and allowing the mind to be natural, and holding the mind in its natural state, taming the mind, stopping the crazy, wild thoughts, conceptualization, the mind becomes tranquil, the mind becomes calm, the mind becomes tame. The mind catches up with itself. It's alive in this moment, is very fresh and aware, but at the same time, it doesn't require any object. It doesn't require any experience. It's as it is in the moment without requiring anything. And in that is the natural basic truth, the primordial awareness that has been with us right from the beginning. I mean, going back thousands, millions of lifetimes. That primordial awareness is still our basic nature of our mind, and always will be and always was. It's the basic nature of everything, actually, and it's completely clear. What nirvana means is it has no characteristics. It's absolutely pure. It's what we call clarity and emptiness. Emptiness means basically it has no characteristics, almost like it doesn't exist. It's got no characteristics, no details, it can't be explained, it's ineffable. And clarity means it's just clear, it's completely clear. But neither of these things, emptiness, empty and clear, neither of these things mean it doesn't exist. It's awareness. It's like if I say to you now, what is consciousness? Does consciousness exist? If it does, then you can explain it to me. No one can explain consciousness, but we are using it right now to listen to this. We are using it when we look, we're using it when we think. All of these hearing, tasting, touching, all of these things are consciousnesses, and they are all divisions or extensions of the foundation, the ground consciousness. And the ground consciousness is a manifestation of the primordial awareness. So it's like that. The other way of explaining it is that the simple way of explaining it is that our normal daily consciousness is gross consciousness. When we go to sleep every night, that is the subtle consciousness. And when we die, our mind withdraws into what is known as the very subtle consciousness. And the very subtle consciousness is the primordial awareness. And so that at the base of all our consciousnesses, all our experiences, our whole life and everything, all of reality is this basic, pure, empty clarity known as the primordial awareness. Thank you. Any questions? Please.
How do I attain nirvana in this very life?
Sorry?
How do I attain nirvana in this very life?
Nirvana.
Yeah.
You relax. Too much thinking, too much chasing. You at night, when you dream, when you meditate during the day, if you get chance, you try and meditate more and more. Everyone, try to meditate. And at first, just a few minutes, and then extend it. I'll be honest with you, a good meditation, lasts over an hour. And in that meditation, you can, mind becomes more and more subtle, less distracted, less noisy, less chaotic. And then when you go to sleep at night, eventually your dreams will reflect your state of mind. And when you wake up in the morning, you will have a printout, a report on how your practice is going. If you still have a certain delusion, anger, jealousy, pride, desire, whatever, that's what you were dreaming about. You can tell from what your dream was tainted by, which delusion your dream was tainted by. In the morning, you get the printout. The printout comes in the waking up stage. Not necessarily when you're fully awake, but as the last part of waking up, as your awareness is in between sleep and awake, you will get some kind of printout. And nirvana, you will know. That's when you'll be able to tell. You'll start getting the first hints of progress towards the real result. When you wake up in the morning and the mind is joyful, peaceful, empty. Empty, not in the Buddhist sense of empty as in selfless, but there's not really much on the report card. It's kind of a blissful void. It's kind of a clarity, and it's very nice. And the more you can experience that, the more you can get that, And that, like I say, depends on your practice. It depends on how calm you've managed to keep your mind the day before. Now, obviously, the problem is we've got so much distraction and worry and stress in our life. So that's why, as a Buddhist, by the way, you're all Buddhist now, you must try to find the simple life. You must try to de-stress. And if you can't do that and your conditions are trying to stress you, trying to worry you, trying to cause you anxiety, you must reject it, even though the external conditions, you know, it might sound irresponsible for me to say that. But what Buddha said was, in the old days, the city was walled. They used to wall the city. That was before the police, really. And you had they built a big circular wall around the city, and 4 gates. And these 4 gates were the only way in or out for market traders, businessmen, citizens, and they were guarded by soldiers. And Buddha basically said, make your mind like that. During the day, you keep out the criminals, you keep out the vagabonds and people that will cause harm. So this is an analogy for during the day, you keep out worry, you keep out stress, you keep out jealousy, you keep out desire, you keep out anger, you keep out greed, you keep out stinginess, you keep out hatred, you keep out discrimination, and you let in loving kindness, you let in warmth, you let in sweetness, you let in the heroic, saintly intention towards others. And then your mind will be steadily imbued day by day with the glowing, radiant light of integrity, spiritual integrity and goodness and virtue. And that's how you guard the mind. And interestingly, the Buddha said at night, what the guards on the gates do is they come in and they guard. And they walk around the streets at night while everyone is sleeping, like the police, looking for robbers. And eventually your practice will have that. You will have sleep mindfulness. Obviously it's quite advanced. But in the night, while you're asleep, the virtuous mind checks for the emergence of negativity, the sinful minds, and oinks them out, even while you're asleep. But obviously that's, that's quite advanced. So anyway, you get the picture. And then eventually nirvana will come. But it's basically just, nirvana is basically just throwing out everything that causes a disturbance. And once you can do that, nirvana will emerge as a natural state. It's not something that you make, and it's certainly not a place. People seem to think of nirvana as a heaven, like a place, but it's, we'll get into heavens, the idea of heavens at some point. But basically a heaven is just a manifestation, a visual manifestation of your state of mind. There's not actually a place. The same as this world, really. This is all just a visual manifestation of our state of mind, to be honest. Anyway, next, any questions?
May I ask if you have achieved the state of nirvana, and if you do, if you have it all the time, or does it come and go?
Who, me?
May I ask that?
Well, it's just, it's very difficult to say. It's kind of very deep. Obviously, it's very subtle mind. The awareness of nirvana, I certainly don't have it. But what I'm saying is I can sense that somewhere down there is a very calm state, which is real. And everything above it, all this peripheral stuff that we're doing with the mind, is just pointless, really. Futility, utterly futile. And so that's probably where the best way I can describe where I am at the moment is I'm not really taken in by what the mind does anymore. I think it's a bit of a joke. And I'm talking about death. I'm not just talking about life and what it does in life. I actually think death, the concept of death, and actually the body and dying is a bit laughable, to be honest. Believing that that's real. When you study the Buddha's teachings, you do realize that there's much psychosis that we have got, that we wholeheartedly believe in that's just not true. And it causes us so much anxiety, worry and fear and suffering. You know, these masters, these great Khenpos here, Tibetan masters, they still have physical bodily pain. All right, when they start dying, they will still have a bit of pain. When they're in their life, the same as us, aches and pains and headaches and viruses, etc. But their mind, they don't suffer. Listen to me carefully. Just by understanding that it's not actually real, by understanding that the physical body isn't you, isn't actually yourself, identifiable, independent existence. I'll try to explain this third one a bit more. What we mean by something being real is, if Shantideva, the great Indian Buddhist master, saint, and Atisha, they both explained what us as ordinary beings mean when we say something really truly exists, right? And if you actually examine what it means it was never produced. It has always existed. When we say an apple, when we say a chair, even when we say my friend, even when we say my baby, right? In our mind, when we impute how real that thing is, it is that for it to be as real as we grasp it, as real as we are apprehending it, it would never have had to not exist. It must have always existed, and it will always exist, and it will always be the same. It never changes. That's what our actual proposition is when we say something really truly exists. So it's impossible. As soon as you start investigating any object, you can see that it was produced from other causes, and you can see that it will deteriorate, decay, and not be that anymore. Someday it will not be there. And therefore, we cannot in any way assert that it truly exists. And yet, the important thing here is our whole life is based on this idea of everything truly existing within itself from its own side. So Nirvana comes when you renounce all this, when you give it all up, and you don't fall for that anymore. Buddha said, just use logical reasoning and rely on what we call the transcendent wisdom. Transcend all this nonsense, this rhetoric. Just let it all go from the mind and just relax. Allow the mind to relax within itself with no characteristics, no information, no data at all. And that in itself, that very simple meditation of just allowing the mind to not be grasping, just for a few minutes, life-changing, realm-changing. Simple as that. It's really annoyingly simple.
And when I'm on this journey, Buddhism, and this path will, in samsara, take me whatever kind of lives it will take. If I continue dipping, this is not challenging it, this is just a genuine, if I keep on dipping my toes in atheism at the same time, evolution, feel myself a stoic instead of a Buddhist at that moment, will that throw me back in the journey every time? Although you just said, the Buddha says, whatever works for you and use logic, and I say, what I'm hearing here, I find in Stoicism as well, but not the past lives.
Yes.
I find in atheism as well.
Yes.
Because I've been that more longer. Will it allow me still to do that journey and say?
Well, allow is a bit of a strange concept because, as I say, the main thing to realise is cause and effect, right? Which means karma. So karma is very complicated. So allow, using the word allow, is, you understand, all I'm saying is, what you're asking is, how will we know what's going to happen? What causes do we need to put in place to make certain effects? It's very difficult. Basically Buddha said, make all your causes virtuous. Cherish others instead of yourself. All right? So everything has to be altruistic. If you make everything altruistic, you will definitely have higher rebirth, good conditions. But what we do actually as Buddhists is we don't just want a higher rebirth and good conditions, because eventually back down again, samsara is circular, round and round. What we actually try to do is stay on the Buddhist path in all the future lives. That's our real main prayer, our real main goal. And the way we do that is we just try to have a realization, a full realization now in this life, that everything is devoid of the self, the third one. All phenomena is selfless. Then your mind stops grasping. And then when you're reborn in the future, obviously we do good deeds, try to accumulate merit by cherishing others and not ourselves, we do all the other practices. But the main thing is to realize selflessness, so that when you're reborn, wherever you're reborn in the future, you're not selfish. You don't have that delusion which causes all the suffering. You don't have that, this is the important point, you don't have that selfish delusion which causes you to be dangerous, harmful to others. When you're not selfish, when you've neutralized the self from your mind stream, no matter where you're born, you're harmless and you're not vengeful. So even if people are horrible to you, now we're talking about saints. When we use this word noble, we're talking about noble people. And they are, basically noble means, like I say, saintly or heroic. It just means you cherish the others, you protect the innocent, you spend your life, every life, helping others, protecting the others, doing your best to help the others, and that is your joy, that is your passion. Whereas at the moment, our joy and our passion is our own pleasure. And that is what actually doesn't bring us pleasure. It actually is the cause of all the suffering. So it's a big turnaround. I'm sorry to tell you.
Yeah,
Sorry to...
Perhaps this one here, it might be helpful to you, my friend. You, yeah? As regards atheism, you can say clearly it's not an issue with Buddhism, right? As regards Stoicism, certain things the Stoics looked at and made errors in, which resulted in the famous Stoic problems, with depression, suicide. So it's fair to say that Stoicism cannot compare with the Buddhist teaching and made certain errors which annihilated it in history, right? As regards whether you can make progress, the answer is yes. You can make progress through all misunderstandings and partial understandings throughout your life without settling many of the fundamental issues with which Buddha has, with which Buddhism teaches. You can still purify your mind, still the same beautiful state of mind, still the same transcendental knowledge on the path as part of a system of long experiences. And you shouldn't worry about these, because your whole life you will be sorting out philosophical nuances at different levels, So people in many different disciplines attain different and very high states of mind. It's only when you reach the very highest you have to resolve the different philosophies and make some understanding of it. So you don't worry, you can make progress if you get into insight and make that progress. And don't worry that you're not solved problems. They're going to be there, even when you have made accomplishments.
Yeah, very good.
Sorry?
Thank you. You got me at when you said, my friend.
That's very good. So yeah, we must try to keep it simple, because it can get very complicated, technical issues. But the basic bottom line is selfishness and selflessness. And you need to sit down and contemplate. Basically we say study, contemplate, meditate. All right. So you study first the Dharma. This is very important, not just come into this talk. If you really want to change, you read and study and listen to teachings, etc., until you get some kind of construct, some kind of structure, framework in your mind of the basic principles of the Buddhist path, what Buddha's intention, if you like. And once you've got that, you can contemplate. You can just sit down without any more teachings, and you can just try to apply it to your life, to your mind, And from doing that, you will get some idea of basically the mind needs to be cleaned. The mind needs to be purified. If you think of the mind like a window pane, and at the moment you've got no view at all, it's completely obscured by dirt. And gradually, through our actions, through our meditation, through our letting go, we purify the mind. At the moment we're holding on, and that it keeps the dirt on the window. But by letting go and by what we call applying the antidotes, so it means, for example, how you would normally react in your normal daily life in a bad situation, you change, you do something different, purposely do something different. So when someone is horrible to you, or when you have a problem, car breaks down, you get stuck in the rain, you miss the train, etc. The way you would normally react, you have patience. And even better, you consider the other people who might be in the same situation. You consider the suffering of others instead of your own. And then you become what we call the hero, instead of the selfish child. You understand? It's a wonderful practice. And it's, like I say, it's got this heroic sense. It makes you a noble, it will make you a noble man or a noble woman. Instead, because first of all, in the beginning, before we become Buddhist, we have to be good human beings. Good human beings in the old days was called a gentleman and gentlewoman. You were gentle, yeah, non-aggressive, non-retaliatory, non-harmful, respectful, always respectful, desperately respectful to others. A gentleman, I don't know about in Holland, but I'm sure in all over the world in the old days, there were gentlemen. Absolutely 100% non-retaliatory, non-aggressive, refusing to get angry, and living by their honour. They were extremely honourable people, and that was a gentleman. But above the gentleman or the gentlewoman was the nobleman and the noblewoman. And the difference between the gentleman and the nobleman is the gentleman is just always respectful, always respectful. But the nobleman is kind. The nobleman actually puts others before himself. The gentleman doesn't put others before himself, he's just equal. The nobleman or the noblewoman is the hero or the heroine. And what the nobleman should do is like the old knights. They fight for others. Nothing for themselves. They don't care about themselves at all. This is the real meaning of the word noble. And then once you get to that, the next level up from nobleman is transcendent. Transcendent means spiritual, basically Buddhist. When you start to transcend everything and you actually become the saint. So there's levels of good behaviour, virtue, and we are aiming for the very top. If you are interested in the Buddha and what the Buddha achieved, full enlightenment, that is the absolute transcendent supreme top, what we call perfection. And we are aiming for perfection. So it doesn't matter where you are, where you're starting from at the moment, you just start small. And like I say, if you want to practice, then you just react differently. You wait for the golden opportunities of your negative reaction that you would normally have. You know how you would normally react in that situation when the washing machine leaks all over the floor, or you drop a cup, or a big bill comes in that you can't afford to pay, or any of these things that cause you to get annoyed or worried, etc. At that point, you become Buddhist and you react heroically and don't shrivel up. You see it for what it is. You see it as, at the very least, you see it as proof that Buddha was right. It is all suffering. You take some Buddhist avenue with your mind and turn this life into something meaningful rather than being oppressed by it. Enough? Thank you. See you next time.